We're recording. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you. And so normally, I don't. Normally, I prefer not to take questions offline and then try to respond to them here. It's just too much for me to try and keep track of. But I did get a question from somebody today that I will respond to. And they ask about when I refer to conditioning, what on earth I'm talking about, and if this is something that that I have uniquely identified. I don't think so. What I'm talking about when I speak of conditioning is, and it's a great question, just so it's clear. I always, I make assumptions that what I say is clear. And that's a terrible assumption to make. So when I'm speaking of conditioning, what I'm talking about is, I guess it's sort of, in a sense, it's like classic conditioning, like Pavlovian conditioning. It's in our, it's something that has been, is in our nervous system. It's in our bodies and in our minds. I'm sure that there are correlates at various levels. There are probably biochemical markers, and there are probably physiological markers, and there are probably all kinds of things at various levels. And I'm sure that people who are able to see at psychic levels and so forth can probably see correlates at those levels. I don't have those, I haven't developed those particular skills. But we are, they say that we are born, whether or not this is true, I couldn't possibly tell you, but they say we're born with just two basic programs. That's not true, but we're born with two fears, they say. Fear of falling and fear of loud noises. And those we can lose. As people can lose those fears. It's conditioning. It's in the nervous system, so it can be undone or redone. And over the course of our lifetimes, most of us accumulate other conditioning. So there's a certain, when we're first born, we have no idea what a great white shark is. Nobody's born knowing that, but then you watch Jaws, and suddenly you've developed a fear of sharks. So you've developed this conditioning. And so the classic Pavlovian conditioning is that we all have read about, and whether or not I think actually this isn't entirely how it went down, but I think I read subsequently that it was a little different than this. But the classic story that we're told is Pavlov had dogs. He would feed them and ring a bell, and at the same time. So the dogs become conditioned to associate that tone. I think it was maybe not a bell, but whatever, some tone. They come to associate that tone with they're going to eat. And so after some time, Pavlov then just can make the tone, and the dogs salivate because they're anticipating eating. Because for them, the tone is now associated in their nervous systems with eating. So they respond in the way that they would respond if there was food there. There's no food. It's just the tone. And this is what I'm talking about. I mean, maybe I'm talking about other aspects and other subtle dimensions of this at times, but basically that's it, that we have this conditioning. So we see, it's like, for Freud, a cigar was always a phallic symbol. right? So for somebody who has that conditioning, that's true. But actually, a cigar is just a cigar. So it is true if it's true, but that doesn't mean that it's always true. It's only true if that conditioning is there. And most of us are reacting to our conditioning, not to what's actually here. So we have, I mean, geez, it's so many things, so many. If we just observe in our lives, we'll see that this is true. So, I mean, a simple thing, I say simple, one way that a person could demonstrate this to themselves is just make a short list of a short list of some of the things that trouble you in life. Some of the things that some of the things that you don't like, or some of the people you don't like. Some of the people you don't like is an interesting one. Okay, so just a short list, 5 people you don't like, 5 people you have problems with. And then you can begin to just, one at a time, you could just actually just imagine that person. You could just close your eyes and just imagine that person and just see the person. Just see them as they are. And if you do this, rather than entertaining all of your beliefs and thoughts about them and indulging all of your reactivity, what will happen? It will change. Your relationship to that person will change. Your reactivity to that person will change. That person might even change. And this is the amazing thing. That person might actually change simply because you are just in your own imagination repeatedly seeing them, just seeing, not reacting. And this, why is this so? Because so you can do classic conditioning, and then you can do, I don't remember, it's been a long time since I took a psychology course, but there's you can do the opposite of this, right? You can undo conditioning. So it's called extinction. Okay, so extinction. So the process is called extinction. So you and I don't remember exactly how that works in the Pavlovian classic conditioning sense, but you take somehow, maybe you just, after enough repetitions of the tone without the food, then the dog loses that conditioning. So we have this conditioning. Oh, I really don't like my neighbor Bob. Bob is just such a SOB, and he's always causing me problems, and he's, always out there mowing his lawn at 6 in the morning and waking me up and whatever. So you've got this conditioning. Bob, I don't like Bob. Bob, every time I think of Bob, here's this feeling of unpleasantness. So what am I doing? I'm every time I indulge that, I'm just reinforcing that conditioning. Now, who is suffering? Bob? No, me. And what's happening? I'm just reinforcing this conditioning. If I don't like the experience that I'm having, and I just keep rehearsing it, why do I expect that I'm going to have a different experience? Like, if I just hate Bob enough, one day I'm going to feel happy. Doesn't make any sense. So there's I don't know what sect of Buddhism, but there's some Buddhist practice. I think the term that they use is metta, METTA, which is like loving. I think it's translated as loving kindness. And so it's a similar thing to what I just described, except that they put like a positive spin on it. So I'm proposing, you don't even have to try to love Bob, your neighbor. If you just have issues with Bob and you're thinking that it's all about Bob, you're overlooking the fact that you are reinforcing this conditioning. You're reinforcing that experience. You're reinforcing that in your nervous system, so that every time that you think about Bob, you experience unpleasantness. Then what happens? So it actually spreads, because in your nervous system, you have not only linked unpleasantness with Bob, but you have Bob linked with all kinds of other things. Lawnmowers. So now suddenly every time there's a lawnmower, you experience unpleasantness, because by extension, in your nervous system, lawnmowers through Bob is linked with this conditioning of unpleasantness. Not only that, Bob's lawnmower is green. Well, suddenly green becomes unpleasant for you. Bob reminds you of your uncle. Well, so now you don't like your uncle. You don't like anybody named Bob. You know, everything just starts to spread, and it sounds ridiculous, except that it's true. And this is so you don't even have to start trying to love Bob. You can just, like I said, you can just every day just close your eyes and just see Bob. Just see Bob as he actually is. And what happens is, if you're willing to see Bob as he actually is, which is just Bob, not the conditioning, it's just Bob, then bit by bit, that conditioning undergoes this extinction process, and you start to not experience so much unpleasantness. Then what happens is, how could this change Bob? Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe they're actually, I do know. I won't say I don't know. I do know. It's really obvious to me. It's obvious to me energetically how that's so. It's obvious to me that my experience of Bob is entirely a projection from within me. So that is absolutely clear to me. But for somebody who doesn't necessarily want to buy into that, because that sounds a little bit too far-fetched, you can at least see how that there are all of these subtle cues that we pick up on. And so Bob, who's my neighbor, is picking up on all these subtle cues from me. And he is reacting to that. So as I'm less reactive to him, then he has less to react to from me. So everything smooths out. Suddenly, Bob just one day he decides, I don't like mowing at 6 in the morning, actually. He starts mowing at a reasonable hour. But not because I went over there and got up in his face and, Bob, you jerk, you shouldn't be mowing at 6 a.m. So, but the Buddhists who do, and again, I don't know I can't remember what sect it is, but the Buddhists who do this meta.
It's
say that again. Theravada. Yeah, they do a similar practice where they actually, and I can't remember exactly how it goes. I think start with those who you love, and so anybody who, it's a really nice practice if you want to do it. You just every day just sit quietly or lie down with your eyes closed and just bring into your awareness those you love, and you just feel loving kindness. Just express loving kindness, call them into this loving kindness, and then those, you just extend it out further and further and further. So you invite those who maybe you are acquaintances with, friendly with, loving kindness. Then those who you feel neutrally about, and those maybe who you've got some little issues with. On and on and on until eventually you can have, and it sounds like maybe scary or impossible or threatening in some way, but until you can call Adolf Hitler into this field of metta. And the reason that, that can bring up all kinds of stuff. Oh, we can't do that, because if we do that, then we're condoning horrible things, and then we're just allowing that to repeat. So maybe you don't have to do that. maybe just start with Bob the neighbor, who's not actually, he's not like rounding up people and killing them off. He's just mowing at 6 in the morning. So when I'm speaking of conditioning, that's, I believe, what I'm speaking of. And the question was, is this something I have uniquely observed? No, I mean, I think it's widely recognized. In the Vedic culture, they refer to it as samskaras. The Buddhists, I'm sure, maybe I don't know if they call it samskara, they have another term. It's classic conditioning, in the Pavlovian sense. It's all kinds of, we recognize this exists. And the idea that this is changeable is also widely recognized. So each culture and tradition has their own way of understanding that. And in the modern context, we understand that we have what we call neuroplasticity. So we have the ability to really, we have so much power to choose. We have this tremendous power to choose. And I do understand that it's challenging at times, because I know firsthand. But I can also say from my experience that it gets easier and easier to choose what I want. The more that I choose peace, the more that I choose happiness, the more that I choose joy, the easier that becomes. The more I choose loving kindness, the easier that becomes. The more I choose space, the easier that becomes. And again, we could understand this at many, many levels, but let's just say at the physiological level, in terms of neuroplasticity, what's happening? Well, it seems pretty obvious. If I'm choosing hatred, resentment, fear, anxiety, frustration, discouragement over and over and over and over and over, how many gazillions, how do you react to the direct provocation? Ask me again in a moment. But I don't even know. I mean, there are so many possibilities of nerve pathways in the body mind. So many. I mean, it's probably virtually infinite. It's like, how many grains of sand are there? It's infinite, actually. Can't count them. So many of them. And it's the same within the human nervous system. There's so many possibilities, so many pathways. And what happens is we have certain ones that we have reinforced. Out of virtually infinite pathways, we've reinforced, 1,000. And we say that's just how life is. It's just my lot in life. Some people are happy people. I'm just not. I'm a miserable, horrible person. And actually, it's just not true. It's really not true at all. We have just unthinkable potential. And it really kind of, in a sense, is, from my perspective, as simple as conditioning. So what do we, first of all, I would say, there are a lot of different approaches we could take. I mean, some people take the approach of, let's just form new conditioning. So we're unhappy with this conditioning. Let's just form new conditioning. I think that's a great approach. Nothing wrong with that. Just practicing loving kindness seems like a great thing. It's a great approach. Why on earth wouldn't we do that? Who wants to be unhappy? Who wants to live their life with resentment as the dominant force? Who wants to live with regret, hatred, anxiety? And it's just, nobody wants to do that. So loving kindness seems like a great option. You know, I mean, it's totally doable. All it takes is a commitment. That's it. Just commit and it works. Honestly, is that simple. I have to say that even though I think that that's great, I think it's a better approach. One of the challenges that I personally have experienced with that, when it's done solely on its own, because I did that for years, and my life was better as a result. But the problem was, it didn't give me a big enough picture view to be able to apply it to everything in my life. So there were certain domains in which I was able to apply it. Very limited though. Very effective. You know, I was able to apply that very effectively in certain very narrow domains, and it absolutely worked. But as anybody who knows anything about me knows, my life overall was just a terrible mess. It was an absolute disaster. And I was unable to apply or really to step back enough to understand how to apply that to every area of my life. Now, I have that kind of clarity, or a greater amount of that clarity, have a larger picture view, much larger picture view than I did. And so now I feel I have a fairly substantial confidence in my ability to apply that to possibly all domains of my life, many domains of my life. So there's another component which, to me, I think I value. I think it's good. I think it's useful, which is, see if I can really describe this clearly. So could see it in a couple of different ways. One is to take a step back and have the larger picture view. Another way to understand it or experience it is to have to see a kind of transparency to everything. Or another way is to have a sense of equalization of everything. So what do I mean by this? This is, to me, these are the benefits that I perceive from direct inquiry. So conditioning, we can try to just change the conditioning, which is useful, but I think it's also very helpful, perhaps essential, for anybody who, especially somebody who struggles to the same degree that I did, to because it might be, before I say that, let me say this. I've also come to realize that the level of dysfunction in my life was so great that I held a cynical view of a lot of the like affirmative, positive thinking, law of attraction sort of thing, because I was not at that level of consciousness. Okay, my level of consciousness, if there's a hierarchy of consciousness, my level of consciousness is way down here. I was very in the dark, struggled a tremendous amount. So I now have I'm much more, what I think now is that there are, honest to God, people who are totally sincere when they're talking about the benefits that they have had and that they have, and when they're describing their experiences of the law of attraction. And I think that those people are living, they never were down here. They've always lived at a higher level of consciousness. And so for them, they didn't have to take, they already had a bigger picture view. They didn't have to take that step back. They didn't have to get the transparency, because in a sense, they already had some of that. And so for them, not that they wouldn't still benefit, I think they would. I think anybody can benefit from direct inquiry, but they were already living at a high enough level of consciousness that for them, they didn't have to overcome so much. They were able to just say, oh, actually, yeah, that I'm not happy with that condition and I want this conditioning instead. So they can just choose different conditioning, and that works well for them. But for somebody like me who had such a low level of consciousness, it was just essential, absolutely essential for me to have direct inquiry, because direct inquiry kind of, for me, it levels the playing field. It is that equalizer. It is what gives that larger perspective. It's what allows for the seeing of the transparency. What I mean by that is, so back to my example of Bob, my neighbor Bob. I don't actually have a neighbor Bob. Actually, I do have a neighbor Bob, but he's called Bobby. And he doesn't mow his lawn because he doesn't have one. But he lives in the woods, so there's no lawn. But if I have this neighbor Bob who I have this problem with, and what is the value of direct inquiry? Well, direct inquiry is, in a sense, what I was suggesting of just seeing Bob. So direct inquiry allows me, I don't have to love Bob. I don't have to shine loving kindness on Bob. I don't have to welcome Bob into my heart. I don't have to try to have a better relationship with Bob. I can actually, like, I'm not ready for that. Okay. My level of consciousness is here. I'm not ready to love Bob. I'm just at a point where I'm considering killing myself. You know, like, I need, my needs are different from the person who's living up here who just wants to have $1 million instead of $100,000, who just wants to, you know, like, they're just wanting to trade up a little bit. I'm so far down here that I'm desperate. So then what I need is just to see Bob. And what I mean by that is really just that, just to see Bob. I mean, it's a fascinating experiment to just see something or someone. So just really look, to really observe, to actually see what's there. You can try looking in a mirror. That's an interesting one. Just try looking in a mirror at your own face and seeing what's actually there in the mirror. So that's actually, I would say that's a form of direct inquiry, just to see what is.
Excuse me, it's 6
Yeah.
o'clock in the morning. He just woke you up. He's going to mow his lawn.
Yeah.
You are really angry. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's, yes, I wasn't. Oh, yes. This is, okay, thank you for reminding me. So this is back to the direct provocation. Yeah. Okay. So that's great. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah.
because it happened to me 1 hour ago, I was so provocated, you say? Okay.
Yeah.
Provoked? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I just thought, what's the direct reaction, the best one? It may be no reaction, I'm sure, but it's so difficult.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So great. I love this question. Yes. So I find that, okay. So if we view direct inquiry as a skill, which I think is fair. Okay, so I'm gonna call it a skill. So then we could equate it to, let's say, playing what we Americans call soccer, you would call football. Okay, so I I played this game in high school for a year, and I didn't even know the rules to the game. I was too embarrassed to ask because everybody else seemed to know. So I just kind of would run around and hope to God that the ball didn't come anywhere near me. And okay, but what's the point here? Okay, the point is that if a person wants to be skilled in this game, nobody in their right mind would say, "Oh, just go compete at the Olympic level." That's not the way to do it. If you try to go compete at the Olympic level and you've never played the game before, you're assured to just fail miserably. So it's a skill that we want to develop. Well, how are we going to develop that? Well, first of all, we learn basic drills, right? So we would learn how do I handle the ball? And we would just do things like kicking the ball. Just kick the ball, like have somebody else kick the ball back and forth, kick the ball back and forth, learning to just kick the ball. Learning to trap the ball. Somebody's going to throw it to us, we're going to trap it, right? So we just do these drills. Then we get good enough at some of the drills, and then we want to start putting them together, so then we play a game, but not at the Olympic level. And we get more and more skillful, and then maybe someday we're ready to play in the Olympics. So in terms of direct inquiry, it has to be something. I mean, from my perspective, it has to be something. It certainly should be. It's nice and it will be very valuable if it's something that we can apply in real time in our lives. That's huge. That changes everything in life, from my perspective. Just changes everything. It's a miracle. But if I am overwhelmed and don't know how to do it in real time, then I need to train more. I need to do the drills. I need to take it back to the basics. Slow it down. So this is the amazing thing about doing this. There's a couple things I can say. One is, well, okay, yes. So anything that we practice, we actually develop the ability to do that in real time. So if I say, okay, now, and maybe it's still too close to the thing that happened. So let's just choose something else that has small charge. But just think of something that bothers you. Maybe something that happened, I don't know. And notice that you can, as you recall it now, you can slow it down. You're giving me a funny look. You can slow it down.
Slow down my reaction or slow down anything else? The reaction.
Sure. Yeah, slow down your reaction.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So you can just notice and you can start to see the reaction as it's happening. So what's happening when you slow it down? You're seeing it. You're seeing it for what it is. So just observe that reaction slowed down. And you start to notice what it actually is. When it happens so quickly, we don't actually see it for what it is. Right? When it happens really quickly, we just react. Then,
Yeah, as you said before, the angry reaction could reinforce the conditioning.
of course, that's what it does. Yeah.
So it can't be that. Of course not.
Yeah, right. Because every time that happens, see, when we do things quickly, it uses a different aspect of our nervous system. You can know that this is true. You can um, try doing anything, any movement really slowly. Try walking really slowly, and all of a sudden, you don't know what you're doing anymore. It's something that you've done every day of your life with no problem. You slow it down sufficiently, and all of a sudden you're confused. You're like, wait, what am I doing? Which foot goes where? I don't know, because it uses a different part of your nervous system, and it puts us into a mode in which we are able to learn because we're observing. And so it's very important. I think it's a very important skill to learn to slow down. So when we practice by recalling something, and then we can learn to slow down our reaction, then what we're doing is several things. Okay, we're learning. So it's in and of itself, that's direct inquiry. So we are seeing it for what it is rather than what we think it is. We're actually seeing it for what it is. We are also necessarily recognizing that it is our own reaction that is what we perceive to be the problem, not anything else. Because whatever happened, you don't care, actually. All you care about is your reaction. Because you don't, like, if Bob is outside mowing the lawn at 6 in the morning, I don't care about Bob mowing the lawn. That doesn't matter to me at all. If I was soundly asleep, what do I care? What I care about is my reaction. That inside, that's what I don't like. But I say, no, it's Bob mowing the lawn. It's that sound of the thing that's so horrible. No, it's not. It's my reaction. So when I slow it down sufficiently, this becomes clear to me. Also, as I slow it down, I'm learning how I do it. That's also huge because, and you know this because you've taken some of the trainings that I've offered. So you know that I'm big on noticing what you're doing. So when you can notice what you are doing, then and that it's a felt thing, and that anything that we're feeling, how do we feel? I mean, in a sense, it's like it's all binary. It's on, off, on, off. It's either contracting or releasing, contracting or releasing. So we slow it down enough, we start to realize, wow, that reaction is a felt thing. That feeling is generated by a contraction. That contraction was something that I thought I was a victim of, but come to find out, I'm doing it. I was just unaware of it. So now that I've slowed it down, I'm aware. Now what happens is there's another part of my brain that's saying, don't you dare change anything because it's all about Bob. And that's the part that's terrified, actually. Absolutely terrified. So what then? Just slow it down even more. And then for me, it's just really clear. What do I want? Do I want to suffer? Or do I want freedom? Because it's a choice. Do I want to suffer or do I want freedom? If I continue to do this and insist that it's all about Bob and it's not about me doing this, that's suffering. If I choose to instead, okay, all right, I'm afraid, but and just see, just look, just feel, then I'm free. And at first, it's like it wants to go back. It wants to, oh no, it's about, it's Bob, oh. But if I just keep slowing it down, and seeing. But again, this is at first, it's just we train. So use something that has a lower charge, that's something that you can choose, that's a memory, that is not real-time high charge. Because if it's real-time and a high charge and you're not properly trained, forget about it. It's not going to happen. So great question. Thank you. And I say forget about it, it's not going to happen. Divine intervention does happen. Miracles do occur. I mean, it could happen, but I just don't think that I always think it's wise. Let's just hope for miracles. Let's hope for divine intervention. Let's hope to, have angels come in and swooping in and doing all kinds of stuff. And let's not use that as our primary strategy. Let's also have this other strategy of, what can I do? What can I do right now? What choices can I make differently? And I've personally found that to be very, very rewarding and fulfilling to take that approach. And by the way, there's a book. It's an American book. It's in English. I doubt you've read it, but it's a young adult book. There's one that I read as a child. It's called Where the Red Ferns Grow. And this boy really wants these hound dogs. Really, really, really wants these hound dogs. And I can't remember now if it was his father. I think I'll just say it was his father. It could have been his grandfather because his uncle. I don't know. But he says to his father that I can't remember exactly how it goes. He's like, he's praying for them. Okay. And father says, well, something about meet God halfway. So do your part. God will do God's part. You do your part. So you pray for the hound dogs, but if you really want the hound dogs, maybe go get that part-time job so you can buy the hound dogs. So when I find that in a sense, it's like God's already here. God's hand is already open, giving it all. But we have to do our part just to receive. And like that, if people will debate forever, is there free will or not? I say it's wise to assume there is. And how can we, in our observation, how can we actually exercise free will to the best of our ability? And I say, receive. That's the best, to me, the best use of choice is just choose to receive. Choose to receive this moment, this experience. What's happening right now? Just choose to receive this, because this choice, I don't even care if it's true. I don't care if it's true, because because it works. Because my life is better. When I choose to receive this moment, my life is better, consistently and progressively better, every day better. And not because the circumstances of my life every day are necessarily better, but because the more I practice receiving this experience, this moment, I'm less concerned about the circumstances. I just find that I'm receiving the gift of this moment. And the gift of this moment is so rich. The rest of it is like frosting on the cake. So look at the time. Let's see what time it is here. Okay. So I didn't expect that to be so long, but that was the response to the question about conditioning.
Thank you, Jay. Very helpful indeed. And I have a question similar to Wilfried's,
Yeah.
which is the reaction, which seems to be so instantaneous.
Yeah.
I can vouch absolutely for the power to choose when it comes to people and my
Yeah.
responses to them. And that has worked faithfully for me over the years.
Yeah.
So I have few problems with people. But I have this reaction, this panic and contraction towards sudden sounds,
Yeah.
noises like dogs or birds.
Yeah.
And then if you can, I wonder if you could just unpack this a little bit more, in a little more detail, because I think I understand you to be saying the way one can begin to practice with this is to undertake that you will recall it. You will begin not by exposing yourself to the aversive stimulus, as it were, but you're going to recall it. And then I'm trying to understand what you do then. I mean, I'm trying to relate to it in a more accepting way, maybe by seeing the dog. That's just what dogs
Well,
do, because that works
maybe.
for me with people. Because with people, I say to myself, well, that's just their conditioning, and so then it's no longer a problem for me, because I can see my own conditioning interacting with their conditioning.
Yeah.
But with these apparently impersonal kinds of shocks, there I get stuck.
Yeah. So let me, yeah, this is a great question. Let me just, so I can relate this. I never had a particular problem with sudden sounds, but I did have a fairly significant challenge with sounds in general.
I read your book on that, with people chewing, for instance.
Yeah, it just made my skin crawl, made me want to assault them. And so what I can say from my experience is that it's, so seeing that it's, well, so the strategy that you have with people, I will propose that what you've described of it sounds like it's works well enough for you, but it may be that it's half of what's necessary, and that the challenges that you have with sounds is revealing the other half. And so the other half being that, okay, so with other people, you can see that it's their conditioning. So it's not personal at that point, right? I think that's what you're saying, is somebody is seems to be reactive, and they're irritable and angry, and for many of us, we immediately leap to, oh, it's something to do with me. But when you can see, oh, that's just their conditioning, sorry for them that's their experience, because it seems unpleasant, but it has nothing to do with me, then that's very helpful. But the other half of it is, and actually I would say in many respects, the more important half is your reaction to that. So to slow down your reaction to that lets you see, because let's say you didn't have like that, so that ability to say, oh, it's their conditioning. It's like a magical power. And it's a great magical power. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But let's say one day you lose that magical power. So then what? And the more ways that we have so that it becomes a more holistic thing, gives us way more options, so that if we don't have access to one magical power, it's okay. So let's just imagine that you've lost that magical power. So you just take everything personally now. So everything that anybody does, it's about you. And so then what? Then what you can start to do, since you can't rely on that magical power anymore to help you, all you're left with is, well, now I've got my reaction. And my reaction is what I'm actually struggling with. So if somebody gives me a look and I can't say it's not personal, I'm taking it personally, then what's actually bothering me? Well, it's my reaction. So let me now take a look at that reaction. I'm going to slow it down. This is what I wanted to say. I didn't say this before, but the more we practice slowing things down when we're choosing, in retrospect, when we're imagining, we gain the ability to slow it down in real time. So the brain probably says, no, that doesn't make any sense. It's impossible. You can't slow it down in real time, because in real time, it's happening in real time. You'll see, in real time, you gain the ability to slow it down. Why? Because it's your reaction. It's always your reaction, so you can slow it down. So somebody does something, you're taking it personally. Now you just slow down the reaction, and you start to see what you're doing. Then you start to see that you have choice. So how does this apply to sudden sounds? Okay, so you startle. Okay, maybe you cannot change that. Maybe you can never change that. Maybe at the very least you can't change that immediately. So let's not try to change that. That's not the problem anyway, because the startle is a sudden thing. What's right? I mean, that the startle, if just every once in a while you got startled, yeah, okay, not a big deal. It's that I'm assuming, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that it extends past that.
Yeah.
So what you would want is to observe that whole reaction. So notice, what is the startle, and then how does that get prolonged? What is that experience, and how are you doing it? So can you recall a time in which you experienced this challenge, and can you recall now that reaction?
Well, there's a lot of thinking involved, angry thoughts.
Yeah. So that's a part of it. That's great.
Yeah.
And then just take a look at the interplay between the thinking, because the thinking is part of it for sure, but the thinking on its own doesn't have the power to give juice to it. So the thinking is feeding into this loop that involves some feeling. So the feeling it's somatic, it's in the body, you can sense it.
Yes.
So describe that to me.
It's fear that it won't stop, that it will intensify.
Yeah. And what are you doing? So the thinking is, it won't stop, it's going to intensify.
Yeah.
And in the body, you're doing something to protect yourself. Absolutely,
yes, tensing up
yes.
In many places.
Yes. So great. So now you see. I mean, you've it's so clear that you've obviously always seen this, but now, but you've dismissed it in a sense. And I'm saying this is actually the entire problem. You don't have any other problem. This is the entire problem. So you've got this conditioned reaction of tensing up to protect yourself. And then there's a feedback loop of the thinking that says it's going to intensify. You got to protect yourself. And so you tense up and maintain this tension. It's going to happen. It's going to get worse. You keep tensing up. And so this just continues until it stops. And that's been how things have gone. And so that sounds fairly unpleasant.
It's very exhausting.
Yes, of course it is. So the thing, so what is the noise? I mean, in this particular scenario, what is the noise?
It could be a dog barking.
Okay. So a dog is barking. And actually, this is great because in some ways, this is actually the same thing that I used to experience. Okay. Because I can actually remember dogs barking and just the dog, in some senses, the dog, when the dog would bark intermittently, that was the worst.
Yeah.
Because then I couldn't even, I seemed to just be
Exactly.
on guard, waiting
Yeah.
for the next bark. But there was another part of my brain that was saying, this is insane, the dog's not even barking. It's like, but it's gone,
Yeah.
it's going to. You just wait and see. You just protect yourself until it does, and then just as I'd start to maybe talk myself down, then oh, they would bark again. Okay.
Exactly.
So of course it's exhausting because you can feel how much energy that demands to maintain that high alert. So okay, so in my experience, step one is to get clear that there is no actual threat. And you already know that, but it's just helpful to just get crystal clear on it. This cannot possibly hurt me. This dog barking cannot possibly hurt me. My nervous system is conditioned to react as if it could. So I'm not denying that. That's true. That's happening. But it cannot actually hurt me. So when I'm crystal clear on that, then that can be my anchor. I can refer back to that anytime I have doubt. Because what's happening is this conditioning is activated, so I'm on high alert as if I'm about to be attacked. So because everything is moving so quickly, then I'm just assuming in this bizarre way that I am going to be attacked. I am going to be harmed in some way. So it's helpful to have this anchor of, wait, no, I have clarity. Can't hurt me. It's just a dog barking. So that in and of itself isn't going to solve anything, but it's a helpful anchor just to have that clarity. When I'm getting all worked up, actually, wait, what's my anchor? Wait, okay, the dog barking's not going to hurt me. So now that I have that anchor, what is next? Well, to slow things down. So to slow it down is just to observe what's happening. So I'm aware that I'm armoring, tensing, and I say where, and you say everywhere, but maybe that's true, but it's not the most truthful thing, because the most truthful thing is there's somewhere that you can identify if you're observant enough. That's the real focus of that tension. Somewhere.
You mean in the body?
Yeah.
Oh yes, definitely the throat and chest.
Yes, there you go. So then you see the power of slowing it down and being really clear and honest is that before you slow it down and you're really clear and honest, then you're just kind of going along with the story that says, I'm under attack and the tension is everywhere. And then when we get really slow it down and get really honest, it's like, oh, well, actually, no, it's sort of got this location. And then, so I would say just choose one. So which of the throat or the chest, which is more important?
Yeah, it would be the throat.
Great. So you just choose the throat. And then you just choose to release the throat. And if you just continue to do that, as challenging as that might seem, it will work. And what you'll find is the dog will bark and the throat will automatically tense up, and then don't don't fall for any of the thoughts that say that that's a problem. It's not a problem. It doesn't matter. What's important is that you can just choose to release it.
Yes, I've heard you say that the intention is the important thing, because one may not be able to release the tension immediately and sufficiently, but it's the intention is important.
Yeah, and that, so for anybody who wants an answer to that kind of challenge, I'm proposing, in all honesty, that works. That does require, I mean, anything requires commitment. It's the kind of thing where what will happen is you apply it, you will get, things have to change. They will absolutely change. There's no way they cannot change. But what will happen most likely is they will, because there's everything's connected to everything else. It's like I was talking about the associations with Bob and lawnmower and green and uncle and all these things. Those associations exist. So the reactivity is associated with a lot of things, and it takes a little while to extinguish enough of those that the whole complex sort of dissolves. And so what can happen is you'll experience a certain, let's call it, success with this approach, and then it will seem like the next day it will seem like it worse rather than better. And so that's the point at which the commitment and persistence is really important. What's happening is just there's more associations surfacing. And so as long as we are committed to it, then what happens is those associations are released. And then at a certain point, there's a kind of critical mass, and it just, that complex can't hold itself together anymore. But because it's been reinforced so much over time, because there's so many associations, there is this mass, in a sense, there. And so we can release a few of those things, but if we're not committed to it, then what's going to happen is it's just going to reassemble itself. So we have to be committed to it. If we're committed to it, then eventually these things are dissolved, and then there's nothing to hold it together, and that's it. But in the meantime, there will be days that we'll say are good days and days that we'll say are bad days. We can't be swayed by that, because we are not consciously, we don't have conscious access to all the inner workings of that whole mechanism. So we just have to have trust that it is working. That's the value of other people saying, I've done it, it worked for me, because then you know that if you're having these if you're having these struggles, and then it's helpful just to know other people have also had those struggles, and it works, it still works. So then you can just commit to it. What the other thing I was going to say is that for you, because you're participating in the somatic training, there are, well, I can give this advice more generally, but for you, I can also work with you within that program to explore other ways that you can help to sort of accelerate this. But generally speaking, when we identify somewhere in the body where we have that tension, that chronic reactive tension, so everything in our body is connected to everything else in our body, clearly. And so things just as I was talking about in terms of the nervous system, all of the associations that form these kinds of bundles, in the body itself, we also muscularly, okay, there's a similar phenomenon in which, so you have this, and the throat is an interesting one because there are a lot of muscles in the throat, a lot of tiny little muscles. There's this hyoid bone, which is a floating bone. It's the only bone in the body that's not directly connected to another bone. And so it's supported entirely by muscles, and there are all these little muscles connecting to it. It's involved in swallowing. Okay, so it's an interesting, the throat is very interesting. So so you can probably imagine without too much difficulty that if one muscle, so I don't know the exact number, but let's say there's 25 muscles in the throat, okay? So if one muscle in the throat is chronically contracted, it's not difficult to understand that there are implications for the other 24, right? If one is always pulling a little bit this way, then the rest of them are accommodating that. So all of the whole throat is accommodating that reaction. But not only that, because all of those muscles are connected to other muscles, or indirectly, but they're connected to bones that are connected to other muscles. So then you've got these muscles in the throat that are connected to bones that are connected to muscles in the jaw and in the face and around the eyes and on the chest and shoulders. So then not only are these muscles all involved, but so are all of these. So it's all working together to support this conditioning. So as we release that conditioning, what's happening is then everything else has to learn to also release into its natural state rather than accommodating this conditioning. So a very simple thing, but a very effective thing that people can do is, so if, let's say you have, so for you, you're talking about the throat, so you can release the throat, and then you can start to notice, and this could be something that you could explore whether there's reactivity or not. And just as a general thing, when you've identified the place in the body where this reaction is happening, then you can start to explore, and it's often helpful with eyes closed because it's more of an inner felt thing. But you can start to notice, so in this case, the throat, relax the throat, notice the spaciousness in the throat, and then you can start to just inwardly notice, for example, just feel where the center of the throat is. And then you can feel for the center of the mouth. I'm somewhat arbitrary, but I mean, not entirely arbitrary, but just, this is not the only way to do it, but feel the center of the throat and then the center of the mouth. And you can just go back and forth like this, just feeling for the center of the throat and then the center of the mouth. Then you can, you don't want just those 2 points. You want to then also, and you want to feel, so you could use your hand externally. You could feel, for example, for the right, the left collarbone where it connects to the breastbone. So you could just put your finger there, and then you could feel inwardly that point and then the center of the throat. And then you could do the same with the right collarbone. And you could do that then with the ears. Ears, center of the mouth, center of the throat. So that you're getting a clear sense inwardly of this whole area and how it all relates. As simple as that is, and as well, as simple as that is, it can be very effective because it's helping to restore proper sensory information so that you then have an easier time releasing the throat. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jay. What I just want to express in general my appreciation. What I think is really very special about what you're teaching is this fine-grained analysis of what one needs to do and what is going on. It's very, very special and very, very helpful indeed. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate it. And I mean, and also, it comes from all of us together. That's the important thing also to remember. I mean, the questions are so good, and that this is a process that we're in together. So it really is, couldn't work otherwise. So I'm very grateful for your participation in this too. And let me know how that goes. I mean, ongoing, keep me updated on how that exploration goes for you, because I'm interested. I want to know how.
Thank you very much. I will. And I'm sorry I took the topic away from the interpersonal aspect, but
No,
you know, we'll have time to get to that in the future, perhaps.
Yeah. No, it's the same. That's the beauty of it. Is it's the same, because we think that it's about something else. We always think it's about someone or something that's out there. Not always. We don't always think that. We often think that. Or we will similarly objectify our own experience. This is another interesting thing, right? So if we're not projecting it out there on those sounds, those objects, those people, and feeling victimized by those things, we'll feel victimized by our own experience, and we'll objectify that, and we'll call it something, right? We have a name for it, and that's fine. I mean, having a name for something isn't entirely bad, but it's just useful to notice how I can think that I'm a victim of my state. So, oh, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm worried, I'm fearful, I'm angry. So then we objectify the state, and then we perceive ourselves to be victimized by that. But it's, to my way of looking, and based on my experience, it's actually all the same thing, which is that I'm projecting onto some object, whether that is an object that I think is out there, or it's an object that I think is in here, but it's oppressing me. And no matter which, I'm overlooking my own reaction and what choice I have in that. And so the remedy is the same in every case, which is observe, recognize what I have choice in, recognize how I'm doing this, not how I'm doing depression, anger, anxiety, because I'm not necessarily doing those things. That's just my thought about it. But I can observe what is my actual experience, and what part of that am I doing, and it becomes clear. Oh, I am doing this, and it's always self-protecting. It's always a contraction, and the remedy is always the same thing. When, you know, we've heard it a million times from different people: let go and let God, right? But we don't know how to let go, because we didn't observe closely enough to recognize what we're doing to hold on. When we become aware of exactly what we're doing, then we have the ability to let go. And then we can start to explore what other means do I have available to support me in letting go more with greater facility. And that's what we were just looking at with this like inner somatic exploration, is just a tool that we can use to then further support ourselves in gaining facility in letting go. But the first and most important thing is to slow down and observe closely enough to recognize, where am I holding on and how am I doing that? And then that's essential. Only afterward can I then use these supportive means to gain greater facility.
Thank you. Yes, that sounds much clearer to me now. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. let's see. It is, we got a little time if anybody's, I mean, I'm happy to go and have lunch. I got stuff to do, but if anybody's got something, I'm happy to hang on for a few more minutes. Okay.
Hear me?
Well, thank you. Were you gonna say something?
Hey,
Vic?
Joey?
Yeah.
Might as well, because then if I don't say anything, then, you know, another week will go by where I didn't say anything. um, okay, while listening to the talk, I was able to come up with multiple examples of how this applies in my life. In particular, you know, in my house, when my mom sees me in the morning, she says good morning, and so I feel tension, like, oh no, I don't want to say good morning, I really don't, and so I don't, and so I had to find a way, like, oh well, why is this happening? Is it because I don't like her? I mean, yeah, there are times where I don't like her, but so I kind of made a compromise with myself. Like, all right, I'm gonna let the reaction happen, and so when she doesn't say good morning, then I'll say good morning. I'll make up for the good morning if she doesn't say it.
Mhm.
So okay, all right, I'm there when she doesn't say good morning.
Yeah. I would say, just explore and see. So okay, so let's imagine, and it might be a sad thing to imagine, but just imagine that your mom just died. Now, how would you feel now about having not said good morning to her yesterday?
Yeah, I'd feel pretty horrible. Like, oh, all those times I had the chance to say good morning, I didn't say it because I gave power to that reaction.
Yeah.
Said it was more important than, you know,
Right.
actually loving her in the morning.
Right. So then that makes it really clear, because there's not a right answer to that question, but you gave the truthful answer. So that's revealing. So then when you see that truth, what's true for you is that you actually love your mom. And that a simple way that you can express that is just to respond to her in the morning. So it's not that you're obligated to do so, because you're not. But actually now you can see that really it would be a joyful, loving thing for you to express that. And what you would find, and I'm fairly certain of this, is that as you got in the habit of it, it would feel really good to you. So I'm not going to tell you that you need to do it, but I am going to say that that you could practice just saying the words, not out loud to her, but just imagine that scenario. Like go to your room, and when nobody else is around, okay, or when everybody's watching TV or something, and just sit in your room and imagine that it's morning and your mom is saying good morning, and just imagine saying the words good morning, mom. And do it over and over, and just observe, does saying those words do you any harm? And just observe what the resistance is and see if you actually really want that resistance. See if that resistance actually is helpful to you. See if it actually expresses anything that you really value or want more of in your life. Because probably, my guess is what you will find is just some habit. And it's not a, we can fight with habits thinking that they have all this power and that there's something that we have to figure out and learn and discover, and that why do I not want to say good morning to my mom? It must be for some reason. And in fact, it might just be a habit. It might be something that got established when you were 5 years old, and just because, who knows? I mean, my kids, I see my kids form these funny habits. They're just funny habits. Really odd little habits that I see them happen. I see the first time it happens, and it's just it's a game, or they're just feeling nervous, or who knows what. And then it repeats and it repeats and it repeats. And after a couple of days or a couple of weeks or a couple of months, that's just what they do. There's no reason for it. It's just what they do. And so I've seen that. Well, and the funny thing is, then what can happen is they're doing their habit, and I can then start to interpret that as, well, why are they doing that? What does that mean about me? See? So then now we can both be in it. And then they can get, if I let them keep doing that, then they get to be 25, 30 years old, and they're still doing this thing, and we've got this weird dynamic, and we're both wondering, why is this? Why do we have this weird thing between us? And they're thinking that it's for some reason, and I'm thinking it's for some reason. And in fact, it's just because one day when they were 5 years old, they felt nervous and they did that thing, and they just kept doing it. So just check it out and see what's actually going on. You might find that it's just a habit and it doesn't have any meaning. And actually it would feel good and rewarding to you just to be able to say good morning. And that if that became the new habit, then it would be just as easy.
Well, I think I'm losing you here.
Yeah, could be. Usually happens when we don't want to hear something. But it will be on the recording, so you can listen to it then.
Joey, can I ask you something too?
Sure.
Actually, I wanna tell you something about John's my conditioning about obsessive thinking and how I dealt with the triggers. All I had was just triggers, just like a year and a half ago, was just like probably 700 thoughts or something. I had obsessive compulsive disorder, and I remember the first call we did about the tension resting the tension from thoughts, and that really repatterned something in just a couple of weeks. Just like most tiring triggers calmed down, and now I do get those thoughts, but it's just experience now. I don't seem to have 700 triggers now. It's just like It's like, okay, when it happens, probably like once in a day, and so I feel like there's a significant improvement in just letting go of the tension and experiencing the feeling and accepting what it is, and seeing how I'm doing it, how I'm reacting to it. Every day is just like a new lesson, because I see things every day. It's not like I'm learning about what I was doing every single day. It's like it never ends. I still do stuff out of habit that I'm not aware of, even to this day. Even in this call, when you're talking about sounds, I have triggers for sounds. I get up midway through my sleep when I hear sounds. It's like when you talked about it, I saw my patterning too. I saw my conditionings too. So it's like, I feel like it's much better now. If I keep letting go, and I feel like the obsessiveness is much less. That the thing you thought of, the thing you said about just when the habit is so strong, it's just obsessive. It's just obsession all day throughout. I had pain, my body was just aching all day throughout. It's just like, so when that's life, it was really tough to see that, but once I saw that, it's been relieving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good.
I also have something to say about loneliness, if that's fine, or do we have time?
Sure.
So I figured out, for me right now, there's no escape to it. I feel like that's the only thing that I have right now on my plate, and that's the only thing that's been served. And now I've tried doing undoing what you presented to me like a couple of weeks ago about letting go of my guard in social situations and seeing how I filtered myself out, like how I gone out into public situations and just like had this filter about what people are, what I am, all these judgments I had, and I saw instant results. Like I feel like people were drawn into me instantly when I let go of that filter. People could see that I'm inviting more now.
Yeah.
Somehow people could read that.
Yeah.
So I could see that. I could definitely see that. I could see, like, I definitely saw a lot of things happen, a lot of things shifted, but I still do 99, 95% is just loneliness, and it's pretty empty, and it's pretty depressing, and it gets so it gets pretty depressing. It gets pretty low, and even though I'm letting go of all of that thoughts about it, how I need to do what I need to, what needs to be done, like how it's all fucked up right now, or it's still like I don't seem to escape it, is what I can tell for now. For now, it's like there's no way that I see or I can do or can do stuff that can make me feel less immune to this. This just it's just I feel it as I don't seem to see it as a biggest problem, but I do feel like maybe things might be better than this.
Well, I know this does not solve your perceived problem, but I will say that you are at an age in which your body is telling you that you got to socialize, that you can't. It produces loneliness so that you will procreate.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay, so it's your body wants to continue the genetic train. So it's very normal and natural, and and also it's a great opportunity because you have enough awareness that you can see the gift that this offers you, because you can recognize that you're lonely whether you're with people or not. So the loneliness isn't really about the other people. There's an aspect of it that's generated by hormones, but the interpretation that you have is what actually is making it so unpleasant. Because tell me this. So what you're calling loneliness, is it big or small?
It's pretty huge.
Right.
It's my life.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's this big energy. And if we take the label off of it, then it's just big energy. But there's a programming in the body that's saying, this is loneliness. You're lonely. It's a problem. You got to do something. You got to fix it. So just tune in again to the big energy. Take the label off.
Yeah. I do that. Yeah, I definitely let the label off too, for sure. It gets I know you don't want to use the word intense, but it gets intense, but it's I say that it's big, but I don't I'm not suffering for sure. Because I'm able to like see how my thoughts are arising and how I'm believing all of that, and I could let go of it and get back to my experience, and I do that, and that way it's just the experience now. It's just the sensation of whatever I'm feeling without labeling it as loneliness. Yeah, for sure.
And also the other thing is keep oh, so what will happen is that so the loneliness is what I mean, the interpretation of loneliness is there's a self-protective component to it, and if you continue to protect yourself, then that reinforces that. Okay, so the more opportunity you give yourself to be just to be open in social situations, just to be yourself, then it will help with that. And I'm not saying it's going to take away the energy, because it won't, and it's not going to take away all of the thoughts, because it won't, but it will make it less sticky.
Make it less what?
Sticky.
Yeah.
So the more you, so what I mean is the more you I mean, you described it already. You said that when you let your guard down, then you notice that people were drawn to you. Now that doesn't get rid of the energy, doesn't get rid of the feeling, and it doesn't get rid of the thoughts, because you can still have thoughts that say, I'm still lonely, this isn't satisfying, it's not, they don't, whatever.
Yeah, okay. Exactly.
But what it does is it allows this flow. Rather than trying to stop it, it just allows the flow, and the more that you consciously receive that flow, then what it's doing, in a sense, is it's just washing away bit by bit all of those things, because they can't stand up to that flow. So in the flow, those thoughts still arise, but you just keep being open, and that flow just sort of washes them away, because then you can't really believe them. And who cares? Because if you're choosing freedom, if you're choosing okayness now, regardless of the thoughts, regardless of the feeling, then it's just, from my perspective, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what happens is your brain is going to keep reinforcing that those things are true.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, yeah. When you say the flow of energy, it's just the direct experience, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't know, like I'm 24 now, and I've never had this before, but that thing that you talked about at this age, and I feel it so strong. The urge to get into a relationship, and like the drive, and it's
everybody who's been 24 has experienced that.
Yeah, I don't know. People say they have experienced it at 18, but for me, it's now.
Yeah. Well,
I'm a late bird, I guess.
yeah. I mean, most 16-year-olds experience that, but everybody who's been 24 experienced it at 24, for the most part,
Hmm.
because it's common. It's very, 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 very common.
Yeah, it gets the fear of missing out, the things that I
Yeah.
look at people do, and like people are just having fun, and like,
Mhm.
and I don't seem to have all of that. So there's this there's a sense of lack,
Yeah.
or all of that that's happening too. And
Yeah. No. And the temptation is to think that if you didn't have that, you didn't have the fear of missing out, if you didn't have that sense of lack, that everything would be better.
Hmm.
And I don't believe that is true. My experience is that the experience of freedom is greater when that freedom can be recognized even with those things.
Mhm.
Because then it's possible to recognize that those things are not what you think they are. The fear of missing out is not actually the fear of missing out. That's just the thought about it, but actually underlying that is this energy.
Mhm.
And so it's, to me, I mean, it's just the same kind of thing that I was talking about earlier, really. It all kind of comes down to the same thing. That here's this tremendous energy. This is always present.
Mhm.
Always present, tremendous energy. And then we filter that energy through particular pathways in our nervous system. And so then that enlivens those channels in our nervous system, and that's what our experience is, because
Mhm.
that's what we're enlivening. So if we continue to enliven this fear of missing out channel, then what happens? Well, we're experiencing fear of missing out.
Hmm.
When we take a step back and we recognize, wait a second, actually, this is just energy.
Mhm.
It's not fear of missing out. Fear of missing out is just the enlivening of this particular channel.
Hmm.
But there's just this energy. Then I can choose, what do I want? Because you could right now, okay, right now, in this moment, close your eyes, just feel the energy. Just feel this
I feel
immense,
it from the ankles.
yeah, and feel the purity of it and the bliss of it. Let that bliss just fill your entire body.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
So even if you just catch the smallest glimpse of that, you know that that's a reality, that's a possibility. So then you know that that's just as real as fear of missing out. But fear of missing out is just the habit. So fear of missing out seems more real just because that's the habit.
Mhm.
If you're not happy with fear of missing out, then that's a gift. It's good news, because then you can choose, I'm not happy with fear of missing out. What good
Mhm.
is fear of missing out doing me? If I continue to just indulge, oh, I'm missing out, oh no, I'm missing out, oh, I'm missing out, it doesn't do anything good.
Hmm.
That's the mistake, is we think somehow I'm going to solve that. If I just focus on it enough, I'm going to solve that. But it's not a problem that needs to be solved any more than it's a problem that the Discovery Channel is broadcasting.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It's just, that's what it is. It's just, if you want the Discovery Channel, flip to the Discovery Channel, and there you go. If you want Fox News, switch to Fox News, and there you go. It's not a problem, it's just broadcasting.
Hmm.
And in the same way, fear of missing out, it's not a problem, don't need to solve it. There's no, you could watch Fox News and get so worked up if you don't agree with what they have to say, right? You get really, or if you do agree with what they have to say, you're going to get really worked up. You're going to get really worked up about this. And you're going to think, it's a big problem. We got to solve this. What are we going to do? And you think about it, think about it, think about it, think about it. You tune in tomorrow, more of the same.
Hmm.
You can't solve it because it's not a problem to be solved. It's just a broadcast. If you're not happy with it, change the channel. So if you're unhappy with fear of missing out, the mistake is thinking that I need to solve the problem of fear of missing out. I got to do something to get rid of fear of missing out. I've got to solve this problem. I've got to fix it. No, you don't. Fear of missing out is just channel. You're just giving energy to it. You're enlivening it. The more that you focus on it, the more you enliven it.
Mm-hmm.
But step back. Tune into the pure energy. Notice that that's primary. And then you get to choose, how do you want to, where do you want to, what channel do you want to enliven? If you prefer the bliss channel, tune into the bliss channel. The more you tune into the bliss channel, the more bliss there is. Now, is bliss the answer to everything? No. It's just another broadcast. So I'm not saying that tune into bliss because that's going to solve your problems. I'm just saying notice that the energy is primary. And if you prefer bliss, tune into bliss. If you prefer fear of missing out, tune into fear of missing out. But you don't actually like fear of missing out.
Yeah.
You've seen that movie. It's not so interesting.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying it's a gift, because when if you perceive yourself to be stuck on that channel and you're just you're fighting with it day in and day out, you're squandering your energy, you're wasting your time. Because the lie involved in that is that your life purpose is to defeat the problem of fear of missing out, which is absolutely not true. You don't need
The life's purpose is what?
that. Your life's purpose is to defeat the fear of missing out, and it's not true. It's just you can't defeat it. You don't need to defeat it. You just change the channel. Because then you could say the same thing about anything. You could say the same. You could say that the purpose of your life is to defeat bliss, because you've just tuned into bliss and you're like, bliss is a problem. I got to defeat it. You could do this with anything. You could tune into anything and then define yourself by that and then make it into a problem. But what's primary is this energy.
Yeah.
And then you get to choose, because that's why I always say there's tens of thousands of people around you. And if you want to socialize with people, there's some cool people there. Has to be. But if you just tune into the same thing every time, it's like the people who they go to the same bar every day and then they're complaining. Go somewhere else, stop going to that bar. It's not a good place.
Yeah.
And so if you're unhappy with this particular experience, then observe how you are feeding that and choose differently, because you're not happy with that. And it's not about that, because like I said, it's just that you're choosing it. There's tens of thousands of people around, and you're going to the same party with the same people and saying that that's the problem.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
I don't think you're here. Okay. Yeah. Whenever I go to college and I see these people, and so many people that are not in my class that seem interesting, but I can't seem to have a connection with them, I feel all of those feelings again, like so much intensity coming back. I wanna be with these people, but I don't know. It's like.
But it's not. That's also a gift, because you can see that it's not about the people.
Mm-hmm.
It's about your reaction. So you have this desire for connection because you have a sense that you inwardly are disconnected. You project it onto them, and then you say, "Oh, but I'm deficient. I can't do it. I don't know how. I can't." So what's the problem? It's not about them. It's not about any of that. It's about your experience, and you get to choose. Because if you said, "My goal is to communicate with these people," who's going to stop you? You.
Yeah.
You're the only one that could stop you, because all you have to do is walk up to them and say, hey.
Yeah.
And if you're persistent enough in it, eventually either, you'll make some friends. A couple of things could happen. You'll make some friends. You'll realize you don't actually want to hang out with them. Or eventually they'll just say, hey, please stop.
Yeah.
But you don't even, it's like you don't give it that chance. It's not about what you think it is. It's just about this. The obstacle is the sense that there's something deficient about you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And that you can't, it's the same thing. That's the channel you tune into. It's the I'm deficient channel. And then you want to solve that problem, and you think all these different strategies about how you're going to do that. Well, if I do my hair in a particular way, if I wear these clothes, if I read these books, if I learn this thing, if I get really good at this skill, if I take if I do whatever, do any of these things, that's going to help me solve that problem. But you're still tuning into the deficiency channel. So you just continue to be presented with the same thing, and you get frustrated because you wonder, why is nothing that I'm doing solving the problem? Because there's no problem. You're just tuning into the deficiency channel, and you think that's a problem because you're not happy with that. You don't like that channel. So stop tuning into it. It's still going to be, you're going to have the habit to go back to it, and it's fine. But the more you take a step back and recognize the pure energy that's here, then you realize, who cares? You go into a cinema complex and there's 10 different movies playing. What do you care about those movies playing? If you're going into one of the theaters, you don't care about the 9 others. Who cares?
Yeah.
You leave that one, you don't care. It doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter that there's a deficiency channel that's available that you sometimes tune into, because you're starting to recognize that it doesn't define you. You don't go to war with it. You don't have to have thoughts that say, I'm the greatest ever. You can have, like, I can have thoughts that say, I'm no good, nobody loves me, I'm ugly, whatever. I can have those thoughts. I'm allowed to have those thoughts. So what? They don't define me. They're just thoughts. I can tune into that channel, and I'm not defined by the channel.
So I go to college, and I get to this. That's the only channel I go. Obviously, because that's the trigger right now. That will happen. That I'm something less, or something's wrong, or then fear of missing out comes out. Not doing enough. I'm not talking to people. And all of these, I leave college with a sense of heavy heart, deep, lost sensation. It's just so, I feel lost at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's every single day.
Of course.
Yeah.
But it's because you're giving all of your energy to trying to solve this problem that you don't need to solve. Okay, so just one of a million things you could do. I'm not saying this is the thing, but just as an experiment, you could write down some of the things that you think to yourself about yourself. I'm no good, nobody loves me, whatever. And then say them out loud or to yourself quietly, really, really, really slowly. Okay, with the space between the words, just like that. And see what that changes for you in terms of how you experience those things. It's a silly sounding thing. It's maybe somewhat subtle, maybe not so subtle. Okay, but it's a useful experiment, because you'll see. you'll see what happens. It changes.
Mhm.
Not necessarily in the way that you hope that now you're going to have all this great confidence, but rather it just exposes that you've been fighting with words.
Hmm.
You've been giving those things power, but they don't have the power. But I'm not going to say any more about it. Just test it out, okay,
All right.
and see what happens.
Cool.
It will give you some useful insight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now it's time for lunch.
Great.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye.
See you next week.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Bye, everyone.